now on the American Health Journal. An amazing discovery has proven vital to cardiovascular health: nitric oxide. Our executive producer, Roland Perez, interviewed the winner of the 1988 Nobel Prize in Medicine on this recent discovery.
Nitric oxide was a molecule I wasn't studying until the late 1970s. My colleague who shared the Nobel Prize, Fred Murad, had discovered that nitric oxide could elevate the cellular levels of an important signaling molecule called cyclic GMP. And we became interested in how this might occur. We knew that drugs like nitroglycerin, which had been used since the days of Alfred Nobel 150 years ago to treat hypertension and treat heart pain, we knew the drug worked very well, but the mechanism of action was unknown. So we thought that perhaps the nitro part of nitroglycerin might somehow be converted in the body to nitric oxide. And so we did some key experiments, and we showed that nitroglycerin can be metabolized, if you will, to nitric oxide in the smooth muscle of the arteries. And we then showed that nitric oxide was the active principle responsible for the vasodilating action of the nitroglycerin. So this is how we first started to look at NO, because we suspected nitroglycerin might work through a nitric oxide mechanism. And what this led to, very simply, was the recognition that nitric oxide is such a potent vasodilator in the body, and we couldn't understand why our body would have receptors to interact with an outside chemical like nitric oxide, unless our bodies made nitric oxide, but we didn't know about it. So we set out on a 5-year project. It turned out to be 5 years to try to find and isolate a nitric oxide-like substance in the body. And that's when we discovered that the arteries, the endothelial cells of the arteries, actually make nitric oxide, the same nitric oxide that's generated from nitroglycerin. Once we meaning the scientific community, appreciated the protective effects of nitric oxide in the cardiovascular system, the question asked was, well, how can we stimulate our own nitric oxide production? So many drug companies set off, and they're still working on this, trying to develop prescription drugs for stimulating nitric oxide production. But after understanding the way nitric oxide is produced in the body, we had the idea that we could get by with non-prescription drugs, amino acids, antioxidants, and so on, to stimulate the production of nitric oxide. And what we found was that simple amino acids like arginine and like citrulline, when combined with certain antioxidants like vitamin C and vitamin E, when all of these are taken together, they can markedly boost the production of nitric oxide and also stabilize the nitric oxide, preventing it from being inactivated by those oxygen radicals that I was telling you about. So this is one very simple way to stimulate one's own nitric oxide production. But there are other things one can do as well. For example, it's well appreciated in the past few years now that exercise is the body's principal way to increase nitric oxide production.